Not too long ago, I made a video on the question of why Hampton Wick Station exists. Well, just a couple of stops down the line, there's another station that raises a not dissimilar question. Fulwell. Fulwell is a small station on the branch line to Shepperton. 2 platforms, 2 trains an hour in each direction. Now, that's not exactly unusual, you could say the same of any other station on the Shepperton branch. But there's a lot about the station that doesn't seem to make sense. Historically, most stations had a goods yard. Fulwell never did, making it one of the smallest stations. Yet at the same time, there is a station building, which is admittedly not huge, but it's a lot more than you'd expect at a station this size. Then there's the question of location. These days, Fulwell is a fairly typical London suburb, albeit not as developed as nearby Teddington or Twickenham. It serves a golf course and a bus garage. But in 1864, when this station was opened, neither of those things were here, nor was most of the suburban development in the area. The nearest location of note was Hampton Hill, which is about 10 minutes walk away, depending how energetic you feel. In other words, these days you can make a solid argument for a station being here. It certainly sees plenty of passengers. But back in the 1860s, it's much harder to understand what the builders saw in this area. In 1861, a company called the Metropolitan and Thames Valley Railway proposed a new line. This line would run from Chertsey, through Shepperton, Sunbury, Twickenham, Isleworth, and Brentford. At Brentford, it would connect with the Great Western Railway's Brentford branch, from Southall. There would also be a connection to the London and South Western Railway's line, from Twickenham to Kingston, near Strawberry Hill, although Strawberry Hill Station didn't exist back then. As the Metropolitan and Thames Valley Railway was such a small company made up of local interests, it was likely that the Great Western Railway would be the ones to actually operate it, and that was who the Thames Valley mob approached. The GWR's terms for this were unacceptable to the small company. The GWR were fond of throwing their weight around with smaller companies, and sometimes they got their way, but in this case they didn't. The Metropolitan and Thames Valley Railway approached the London and South Western Railway instead. The LSWR were very enthusiastic about the scheme, partly because of the GWR's early involvement. The LSWR and GWR were arch-enemies. When the LSWR heard that the GWR had been interested in invading what they viewed as their turf, they were quick to come to terms with the Thames Valley lot. The plan was cut back. No line from Shepperton to Chertsey, no line from Twickenham to Brentford. But in return, receipts would be divided 50-50 between the Thames Valley and the LSWR, which was a pretty good deal. Oh, you might have noticed that I didn't say Metropolitan and Thames Valley there. That's because with the line cut back, the Thames Valley dropped the Metropolitan bit. While the deal was good, the resulting line was, frankly, not great. It took a meandering route, often avoiding the most direct path due to the opposition from landowners. Some of the stations weren't ideally located, but that didn't much matter to the LSWR. Their aim was not to turn a profit, but to prevent the GWR from entering their territory. Speaking of stations not being ideally located, that brings us right back to Fulwell. In the 1860s, this was open countryside. One of the few notable landmarks in the area was Fulwell Park, a manor house which, not coincidentally, was occupied by the deputy chairman of the Thames Valley Railway. Later it would be occupied by the King of Portugal, but that's another story from another video. While Fulwell Station and Fulwell Park weren't exactly next door to each other, it was as close as a station on this line could get. The station was opened under the name Fulwell for Hampton Hill, which really highlighted the elephant in the room. Fulwell had a station, but Hampton Hill did not, even though the line passed through both. The idea of a station in Hampton Hill was considered, but 2 stations so close together was seen as uneconomical. Therefore, it was thought that it was better to have a station that kind of served both Hampton Hill and Fulwell, rather than one that definitely did serve Hampton Hill, but definitely did not serve the deputy chairman's house. So that is the reason why Fulwell has a station, even though it didn't really need one when it was built. I mean, I didn't say it was a logical reason now, did I? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I'd like to thank my donors on Ko-fi, Patreon, and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the illogical station to my big house. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.